Your mother would have loved this, said my dad one night in December as we all sat in the living room watching our favorite Christmas movies. He said this every single year. My name is Sammy, and I live with my dad, stepmom, and sister Michelle. When I was 5 years old and Michelle was 3, something happened to our family that would change us forever. Before I tell you what happened, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to hit that notification bell if you never want to miss out on another great story. Thanks, you're the best. I didn't really remember much about my mom. I know she was kind, and she always read us stories before bed. She made us our favorite meals and always said nice things to us. But as time went by, I was beginning to forget what she looked like. My dad loved my mom. I remember that they were always hugging or joking with each other. Our house was filled with happiness. Then one day, my mom didn't come home. My dad was an architect, and he worked from home. He would usually pick us up from school and make us dinner, and Mom would come home at about 6 o'clock. I remember this because it was always while my father was watching the news, but that night was different. He finished watching the news and looked a bit worried. "What's wrong, Daddy?" Michelle asked in her innocent little voice. "Your mom should be home by now, but she isn't. Anyway, I'll read your bedtime story tonight," he said and smiled. He tucked us both into bed, then went back to the living room to wait for our mom. The next morning, we woke up to sirens. When we went downstairs, there were 2 policemen there, and my dad was talking to them. "My wife didn't come home last night. I have no idea where she is. I've tried calling her, but I can't get through," my dad said in a panic. It seemed like he was going to burst into tears any second. I held on to Michelle, who started crying. "Don't worry, she'll come back," I said, trying to comfort her. My dad kept us home from school that day and the next, but my mom never showed up. He stuck posters all over the neighborhood, had several interviews on television begging her to come home or for anyone who knew anything to contact him, but there was no luck. She never came back. My dad became so depressed that my grandma had to come help to take care of us. When I was 9 years old, he met Tracy, my stepmom. He became happier again, and before he knew it, we were flower girls at their amazing wedding. Finally, we had a normal household again with a mom and a dad. Tracy was really kind to us. In fact, she was the best stepmother anyone could ever ask for. She did all the things my mom used to do and more. So I grew up into a happy teenager with a nearly perfect life. I went to a great school and had many cool friends. I loved theater, and I got all the leading roles in every single play I auditioned for. I was also the head of the cheerleading squad, and to top it all off, I was a straight-A student. But you know what they say, when everything is great, something is probably going to go wrong soon, or a bit crazy. And that is exactly what happened. It all started during one of my plays. We were putting on a modern-day television of the Addams Family, with our own little twist. I was playing the role of Wednesday. I had invited my whole family to come, and they were all there. Just before the scene, which required me to chase Cousin It off the stage, the theater door opened and a woman walked in. I froze and forgot all my lines. She looked just like my mom. "Sammy, snap out of it," Cousin It whispered, and I did eventually. After the play, I felt weird. Was I losing it? "I could have sworn I saw Mom tonight," I said to Michelle after dinner. "What? Where?" she replied. "At the play. She walked in and I froze. You don't remember that?" I said. "Oh, I thought you just forgot your lines. Anyway, it can't be Mom. She's gone. Just go to sleep and you'll feel better tomorrow," Michelle said, then went to bed. Although she was younger, she was more logical and always gave good advice. I listened to her and fell asleep. A few days later, my whole family and I were gathered in the living room watching a documentary about solar systems when we heard a knock on the door. "Who could be here so late? Maybe they're lost," my dad said. "Maybe it's a burglar," Michelle whispered. "Burglars don't knock on your door, silly," I said while poking her arm and laughing. We all got up and followed my dad to the door. He opened it and a woman jumped into his arms. "Oh, Fred, I've missed you so much, my darling husband," she said. I was about to get a baseball bat so I could hit her with it when I froze. Michelle froze too. The woman let go of my dad and stared at us in awe. "My babies! Oh my babies! You have grown so much. I've missed you so much. Babies, come here and give Mom a hug," she said. It really was my mom. And here she was after disappearing for all those years. Tracy just stood there awkwardly. I mean, what else was there to do? Eventually, she suggested that we go to the dining room for tea. "What happened to you? Where did you go?" "I've been worried sick. I'm remarried, though. Tracy is my new wife," my dad said after a long silence. My mom scowled. Then she smiled. "I was kidnapped. I was taken away to another country and forced to work in a factory. It was awful. I wasn't allowed to communicate with anyone. I never got a chance to use a phone or computer, so there was no way to contact you. It was like I was in prison. I was so miserable and I didn't know what to do. Then a few weeks ago, I was in bed and one of the guards left the room for a while. I snuck out through a small bathroom window and ran until I could find somebody to help me. They let me live with them and one day gave me enough money for a plane ticket to come back home, she said. But what about the kidnappers? Why didn't you go to the police? My dad asked, shocked. This story was too much for everyone. They're too powerful and I didn't want to risk being heard of or found again. I just wanted to come home, she said. Then she started crying. Do you have somewhere to stay? My dad asked. No, I don't. I have nothing, just the clothes on my back, she said. Well, you can stay here then, don't worry, he said. I looked over at my stepmom and she looked a bit confused. But I guess we couldn't turn my mom away. She was family after all. Thank you so much, Fred. By the way, I snuck into your play the other night, Sammy. You were wonderful, she said. So it really was her all along. That night, we went to bed really late. Michelle and I stayed up with our mom and told her about everything that happened after she left. We felt so happy to have her back. When we woke up the next morning, she had already made breakfast and laid the table. She remembered our favorites, and it seemed like she prepared them all so lovingly. My stepmom walked in with a worried expression on her face. It's Sunday. I usually make protein shakes for breakfast on Sundays, she said. Tracy was a person who loved routines, and anything that came in the way made her angry or anxious. Oh, relax, sweetie. It's only one day, plus I'm their mom and I know what they like, she replied a bit aggressively. At that moment, my dad walked in. Wow, it's all our favorite foods. You really shouldn't have, honey. You've outdone yourself, he said. My stepmom frowned and left the room. We all enjoyed our breakfast, then our mom suggested that we go for a walk. My dad stayed home with Tracy, so it was just the three of us. We went to a mall and we treated our mom to whatever she wanted since she had no money. We went strolling through the park and spoke about so many things. It was great catching up with her, and we were so happy that she was back. Later we went to watch a movie, and we got home at about 9 that night. You know it's past your curfew, young ladies. It's a school night. Go shower and get ready for bed, Tracy said as we opened the door. How dare you speak to my daughters like that? My mom said. They're my daughters too. I can't allow you to come here and ruin everything, Tracy replied. It was then we realized that the two women would never, ever get along. The next day when we got home from school, we heard Tracy screaming. I just cleaned the carpet and she threw dirt all over it. I threw dirt? This house is a filthy mess. When I left, it was clean, and years later this place looks like a garbage dump. You call this cleaning? Our mom screamed back. I know you threw this dirt here on purpose, Tracy screamed again. Ladies, what's the matter? My dad asked. Tracy explained her side of the story. Well, have you considered that maybe you just missed a spot? He said. A spot? A spot? There is dirt all over the rug, she shouted. We opened the door and walked to the living room to observe for ourselves. It was clear that our mom had made it dirty because it was clean when we left. But we said nothing. Stuff like this happened for the next few weeks. Tracy would clean and our mom would mess it up. Tracy would cook a wholesome, healthy meal and our mom would order pizza. Our dad took our mom's side every single time. Our mom also used our dad's credit card and spent his money on all sorts of things. He didn't seem to mind. Michelle and I tried not to take it all too seriously, but one night we had the shock of our lives. It was probably midnight. I got up to get some water and Michelle followed me quietly. Before I reached the kitchen, I heard some muffled voices. I walked closer to listen. I still love you. I've always loved you, our dad said. I love you too, Fred. You need to leave your new wife, our mom replied. They kissed for a long time. We turned around because it was gross, then we realized that Tracy was standing behind us. She had heard it all. You dog! I hate you! How could you do this to me? She said while picking up a huge vase and aiming it at my dad's head. He ducked and it shattered to pieces on the wall. She went upstairs, packed a bag, and left. We never saw her again. The next few days, my mom and dad behaved just like they did when we were little, always joking and wrapped up in each other's arms. It's like my dad didn't even remember that Tracy existed. I sort of felt bad because she was a really nice lady who had been so kind to us. She didn't deserve this. Then, like deja vu, we returned home from school one afternoon and our mom was gone. She was just in the living room. I went upstairs to shower and when I come back, she was gone, my dad said while crying. Maybe she just went for a walk, Michelle suggested. But days passed and she never returned. Did she leave on purpose? Did the kidnappers return for her? We had no idea and nothing made sense. I spent most of my time moping around the house. Everyone was depressed. Go out to the mall and do something you enjoy, my dad suggested one Saturday. He handed me and my sister $100 each, and we left. We had to walk to the bus stop, and on our way, we both had a strange feeling like we were being followed. Ah! I heard Michelle scream. I turned around, and a man dressed in black had placed a bag over her head. Before I could say anything, the same thing happened to me. I kicked and screamed, but I couldn't overpower the person holding me. I felt like I was in a car for a few hours. Then I felt myself being carried upstairs, and after, it sounded like we were on a plane. I fell asleep, so I don't know how long we were flying for. I felt us land and woke up. Let me out! Where am I? Michelle, are you still there? I screamed. I'm right here, she said. We were carried down the stairs and put into a car again. After driving for a few hours, we were taken to another location and the bags were taken off our faces. The men left. There was so much light, I felt like I was being blinded. Welcome to Thailand, a voice said. I stared at the person speaking to me and I couldn't believe it. Mom? I asked. Did you have us kidnapped? Why are we here? Are you crazy? Michelle said. It was the only way. I'm so sorry. Anyway, the story I told you all back at the house was a lie. I was tired of my life, so I ran away to Asia. I live here with my new husband and my 3 children, your brothers and sisters. I want you to live here with me. I only came back so I could get you kids back. I missed you so much and I wanted you to live with me, she said. Look around. This could be your new home, she continued. Her house was like a palace. Her husband came to meet us and our new siblings just stared at us silently. Anyway, I won't force you to make a decision. You can stay here for a few days and make up your mind later. If you want to go back to your dad, I'll let you, she said.
I was like every other kid. I went to school, spent time with my friends and family, had crushes on people. But then, when I was 15, something happened that was like out of a fiction novel. Something that changed my life forever. But before I go on, make sure you like and subscribe and hit that notification bell. If you do, you will become a millionaire in the next 4 years. Trust me, it really works. I was at a bank with my mom and we were taking out some cash because the next weekend we were going to go on a trip to the countryside. My mom was at the counter talking to the staff member and I was sitting in the waiting room quietly. There was a small bowl of sweets on the table and I was about to lean over and grab some when suddenly alarm bells rang and 5 robbers stormed in. They burst in through the door, their faces covered in a full mask. They started yelling at people to stand down and get on their knees with their hands behind their heads. Many of the bank customers were screaming and so were the staff members, but eventually everyone did as the robbers said. My mom had ran straight to me and had her arm around me. I was terrified. I felt like my entire life had flashed before my eyes, and it was boring. I didn't want to die, and I was so scared that the robbers would do something to hurt my mom too. We sat there in agonizing silence while the robbers searched the bank and collected as much money as they could stuff into their bags. I could feel my phone in my back pocket and I tried to reach for it so I could call the police, but I was scared that one of the robbers would notice. Then I heard sirens outside and I realized the police were already here. I felt relief well up inside me, but then one of the robbers grabbed my mom and held her roughly. The robber was a woman and I could see from beneath her mask that she had red hair and bright blue eyes. "Don't come any closer," the woman yelled at the police stationed outside. "Relax, release the hostages and we'll go easy on you in court," said the police. "Sure you will," the woman replied sarcastically. I had to think of something quick. My mom could get hurt. That's when I noticed the fire alarm on the wall behind me. If I could pull that lever down, then maybe it would cause enough of a distraction to save my mom. I took a few deep breaths and then I sprinted to the fire alarm and pulled the lever down. Sprinklers suddenly turned on and drenched everyone in water, while more red alarms flashed on and off. The police seemed to take it as a cue and burst in, immediately arresting the robbers. Unfortunately, the woman that had grabbed my mom managed to escape. She ran from the building and she was never seen again. My mom, however, was fine, just a little shocked, and I was so glad that she was safe. The police took care of us after that, and I was ready to move on with my life. And that's precisely what I did. Life continued as usual, and my family and I were actually closer than ever because of the bank robbery. I guess we realized just how precious life is and how it can be snatched out of your hands in the blink of an eye. My mom and I made a lot of good memories after that. We hung out a lot more and we went on a lot more family trips. It was fun. But then things went really bad. My mother died in a freak car accident, and it was so sudden and unexpected. My world came crashing down. It was just me and my dad left. Dad really helped me a lot in the beginning once Mom left us, but only the beginning. You see, my dad was the head of a huge car company, and he was busy most of the time, so I rarely saw him. Life got pretty lonely once Mom passed away. The first year was horrible. I was always sad, and I didn't have my dad to comfort me. My friends were a great help, but it wasn't the same. But then Dad told me he'd met someone new. He said he had met this woman at his office building, and he had instantly fallen in love. He asked me if it was okay if she moved in. "I know she'll never replace your mother," said Dad. "Your mother was the best woman I have ever met. But is it okay if I have a second chance at love?" I was shocked at first and a little nervous, but I was happy to see him moving on. "Of course," I said. "I can't wait to meet her." I was also ready to welcome my new stepmom. Without a mother figure, life felt out of balance. Maybe this dad's new girlfriend would help fill that void. And so when the date was set for our first meeting, I was going in with a positive attitude. But then something happened like out of a nightmare. I was at home alone since Dad was going to pick her up and bring her to our house. I heard the car pull in, and then I heard her footsteps as they walked up the driveway. My stomach felt like it was full of butterflies. I couldn't contain my nerves. The door opened, and there she was. But as soon as I laid eyes on her, I screamed. It was the bank robber. This woman, my new stepmom, was the bank robber who had taken my mom hostage. I immediately recognized her red hair and blue eyes and her physique. Maybe I could have passed this off as a coincidence. Maybe they just looked the same. But I realized that she recognized me too, and she just decided to play it cool and didn't make a huge reaction, unlike me, who immediately ran into my room and locked the door. "Sam," called Dad in shock, "what are you doing?" Then I heard the woman's voice, and my fears were confirmed, because it was the same voice as that bank robber. "Don't worry, honey. This is normal for teens meeting stepmoms." "Scarlett, this is unacceptable. I'm sorry. He isn't usually like this." "That's okay." My dad thought I was being rude and grounded me after that, but I didn't want to be anywhere near that woman. Scarlett, as Dad had called her, was a criminal. That night, when Scarlett and Dad had retired to their bedroom, I called Dad from his phone and asked him to meet me downstairs. I was too scared to ask in front of Scarlett. Dad agreed, a little hesitantly, and within a few minutes I was downstairs telling him about Scarlett. "She's a criminal, Dad," I said desperately. "Remember when Mom and I were in the bank robbery? She was the leader of that robbery." But Dad didn't believe me. "You're just doing this because you don't want a stepmom." "No, I'm not. I swear," I said. But Dad wasn't having any of it. He ordered me back to my room, and I had to spend the rest of the night tossing and turning in bed because I was terrified of the criminal that was sleeping just a wall away from me. I continued at school, but I could never focus in class. I was always worried about Scarlett. Why was she suddenly in my life? It couldn't be a coincidence, right? And why was she dating my dad? Surely Dad wouldn't have fallen in love with a criminal. None of it made any sense. Then something happened that really turned my world upside down. I was out on the football field during lunchtime. The ball went out of bounds, and I went over to retrieve it when suddenly a man showed up and told me he was assigned to kill me for $1 million. I was so shocked. "Are you insane?" I cried out. Then the man lunged for me, but I managed to evade him and reported him to the police. He was arrested for attempted assault, and the police assured me I was now safe. But it still worried me terribly. What worried me was what the man had said. Who would put a $1 million bounty on me? Then it happened again. I was at the beach with some friends when another guy showed up, claiming he had been assigned to kill me, again for $1 million. I tried to ask him who had hired him, but suddenly he attacked me. My friend screamed as we fell to the ground. I struggled for some time, but I managed to shove him off. I forgot to mention this, but I'm actually a black belt in karate. Crazy, I know. But that's how I managed to evade the other guy too, and I retained the man just in time for the police to show up. When they grabbed him, a note fell out of his pocket. Curious, I picked it up, and this is what it read. "His name is Sam. He has brown hair and olive skin. Kill him and I'll transfer the $1 million to your bank account within the hour. Signed, Scarlett. I stood there with this note in my hand and my mouth agape. It was my stepmom who had hired them to kill me. Questions swarmed in my head. Why would she want to kill me? How did she have $1 million to spare? How was I going to survive? After thinking for some time, I only managed to answer the first question. Scarlett realized I knew too much and wanted to silence me. I had to tell Dad. I ran home and burst in through the door, ready to explain everything, but it was only my stepmom there. Dad had left a note on the fridge door saying he had gone on a business trip and would be away for a week. I didn't know if I would survive that long. "What a surprise seeing you here, Sam," said Scarlett as she stepped into the kitchen. I backed away nervously. "Really?" "Yes," said Scarlett, and she smiled evilly. "Quite a surprise." She moved towards me, and I ran off as fast as I could. For the next week, I lived in hiding, trying to avoid people and survive. Dad didn't answer his phone. I suspected Scarlett had something to do with it. She had probably stolen his phone before he had left to work, so that I had no way of contacting him. I felt stuck. How was I going to make it? Scarlett probably had over 10 guys out to get me, and I was just a teenage boy. In the end, I devised a plan to trap Scarlett. I was going to confront her and make her confess and get it all on recording. Before I left, I attached a recording device to my chest beneath my shirt. I went back home and I confronted her in person. She was surprised to see me back at the house, and she'd probably guessed I was either on the run or dead. "I know who you are," I yelled at her. "You're the bank robber." Scarlett smiled. "Yes, I am." "What are you doing here? Why are you interested in my dad?" I asked. "Well, you're going to be dead in a few minutes anyway, so I guess there's no harm in telling you," said Scarlett. "You see, I love being rich, but getting rich can be very difficult. Luckily for me, I can get rich very quickly by marrying your dad. All I have to do is marry that loser, and I'll have his whole business at my feet, and once I get him out of the way, all of his money too." "What?" I cried in shock. "Oh, and I'm sorry about your mom, but she had to go in order for me to steal your dad and his money." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I tried to escape again, but this time she had me trapped. She locked the doors and tied me up with a rope. "Oh, and we can't forget this," said Scarlett. She grabbed my secret recording device and smashed it beneath her foot. My plan was ruined. I was terrified as to what she was going to do next. But then, suddenly the door swung open and Dad burst into the room. "Dad!" I shouted. "Sam, I'm here. Don't worry," said Dad. He freed me and called the police, who came and arrested my stepmom. When I asked Dad why he was home early, Dad explained that he had forgotten his phone and had tried to contact our neighbors to see if I was all right. But they said they had last seen me running for my life, running from my stepmom. He came home as soon as he could because he had had a bad feeling about Scarlett. I was so glad he did. I miss my mom so much. I hate Scarlett for what she did. She ruined my life, and she took my mom from me. She's nothing but a jerk, but I can't let her ruin my life forever. I'm ready to move forward. My dad and I are closer now, and my mom's memory lives on through us.